This week we have a particularly inspiring woman who is the UK's #1 children's cookery author. She has built a multi-million-pound empire with her books, food ranges, collaborations with supermarkets, her app, and many, many, many more collabs to come. I am thrilled to introduce Annabel Karmel MBE.
All businesses have difficult times, and the why gets you through it. And my why was a very painful, tragic why, but changed my life. And at the time, I thought it was going to be the end of my life. But it was the end of my life in some ways, but it was the beginning of a new life. And you hope against hope, like they can send people to the moon, that they could save my child. And she was in a normal ward for the first day. Next day, she was on intensive care on a ventilator. And for 5 days, they kept her like that. And on the 5th day, they said they wanted to have a meeting. And in your heart of hearts, you know what it's going to be. Yeah. They basically said the thinking part of her brain had gone, what do you want to do? So they put a little dress, put her in my arms, and she just lay there for 4.5 hours until she died. Nicholas was fine, and he was the catalyst to my next life and my career. He was the world's worst eater. But then I thought, you know what? I want to make some meaning from her short life. And what a great thing to help other children to eat better and give them a longer life, because 1 in 3 of us will die from a diet-related disease. It's so important what you eat. So I started to write recipes, and then I decided to go up and down the country interviewing all the experts on child nutrition, pediatricians, allergy experts, whatever. That proved to be very confusing because all these so-called experts contradicted each other. The book sold out within 3 months. It went on to sell 5 million copies.
5 million
Became the
copies.
second best-selling hardback non-fiction book of all time. That's it. If you ever want to do something, don't do something just because you think it makes money. Do something you love and you're passionate about, because that will work. It's just that Marks & Spencer's rang me up completely out of the blue and asked me if I would help them design a range of children's food.
How did you feel when you got that phone call?
Oh, it was great. I mean, my first job was to go around the supermarket, just buy whatever I could find in Marks & Spencer's, and just see if like this is the type of food that children might like, and then design a range. And it was like going to university and be paid for it. If you don't know everything that's going on in your business, that's a real danger signal. You've got to know everything. And you learn. Every day you're learning something. You've got to understand everything. Employment law, everything. And I wasn't qualified in business.
My name is Claudia Green, and this is She Did That, the podcast shining a spotlight on remarkable women who are breaking barriers and proving that greatness knows no gender. From female founders who have raised millions of pounds, the investors changing the landscape as we know it, to survivors of tragedy who have achieved the amazing, and many more. We will share the stories of these incredible women who will inspire and empower you. In order to support us and these women, please subscribe on your viewing or listening channel of choice so we can continue our mission of sharing the stories that should and need to be heard.
This week we have a particularly inspiring woman who is the UK's #1 children's cookery author. She has built a multi-million-pound empire with her books, food ranges, collaborations with supermarkets, her app, and many, many, many more collabs to come. I am thrilled to introduce Annabel Karmel MBE. Thank you so much for being here, Annabel. I'm really excited.
It's a pleasure.
I am very interested to delve into your story. The whole idea of this podcast is celebrating women who have broken the glass ceiling and achieved great things, which you obviously have because you've built an empire. And I'm really interested to start off by talking about how that started in your early life, because you've got really interesting background yourself. You're a musician. So if you could kind of give me a background from kind of very young child Annabel all the way through to to how you started.
Well, I think first of all, I think the why you do something is just so important, because all businesses have difficult times and the why gets you through it. And my why was a very painful, tragic why, but changed my life. And at the time, I thought it was going to be the end of my life, but it was the end of my life in some ways, but it was the beginning of a new life. So I'll go back to the very beginning, like maybe not the very, very beginning when I was a baby, but I went to St. Paul's Girls' School, which is a very academic school, but also a school which allowed you to have a lot of freedom of expression. We had a week called Dalton Week where we had no lessons and you could choose a subject, and I chose art. And then I think they were quite horrified because I chose how people depict death in art and went around the galleries. But it gave me that thought, like I love writing and I love creating something. And maybe that was the beginning of thinking that I would like to write books. And I was a musician. I played the harp from the age of 7, and I won a lot of like prizes. I thought like, this is great, but winning silver cups probably got me through like the hard work of practicing. And you have to be very dedicated. It's a very difficult instrument with like 57 strings and 3 pedals that go in 3 different notches. And my whole life was about music, basically. It was a very musical school. I then went to Royal College of Music. I went to the Royal Conservatoire in The Hague, and my whole life was music. And I got married, and I'd already signed up to play Cinderella in pantomime with Dennis Waterman.
Wow.
I've been playing all over the world, all different things. I played with a lot of people like, Bruce Forsyth on TV, and I had a great career. It was fabulous. So I was Cinderella in pantomime. I just got married, and then I got pregnant, and I was so happy because it's taken me 2 years to get pregnant. And Natasha was born, and she was a very healthy, beautiful baby, and it was my absolute dream. Having a little girl, I'd always wanted it since probably the age of about 4. And then one day when she was 3 months old, I went into her room and she didn't look right. Her eyes were rolling back and she was twitching. And I called a doctor and I said, I think there's something wrong with her. And he was quite reluctant to see her, but after a lot of persuasion, I took him to see her. And he examined her, and then he gave me a whole lecture about how first-time mothers worry about their children and that they're more robust than you think they are. Well, the next morning, she projectile vomited. I took her in my arms to see another doctor. I was literally on the doorstep in Harley Street. He examined her, and then he said, I've got to go and see another patient. Left me for 10 minutes. But when he came back, he said, I think there's something seriously wrong with your child. I think there's something wrong with her brain, in fact. And I actually didn't go and see another patient. I tried to get her admitted to Great Ormond Street. And my heart like sank. I thought, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. I thought she wasn't well, but I never thought it could be that serious. Took her to St. Mary's. They did a lot of tests on her. And at 5 p.m., they'd done a CAT scan, and they told me in a very matter-of-fact way that she would never be normal again, that I had to transfer her to Great Ormond Street, and that she might die.
My goodness, that's just a mother's worst.
It was like a nightmare. And you hope against hope, like they can send people to the moon, that they could save my child. Yeah. And she was in a normal ward for the first day. Next day, she was on intensive care on a ventilator. And for 5 days, they kept her like that. And on the 5th day, they said they wanted to have a meeting. And in your heart of hearts, you know what it's going to be. Yeah. They basically said the thinking part of her brain had gone, what do you want to do? So they put her in a little dress, put her in my arms, and she just lay there for 4.5 hours until she died. And just my whole world collapsed. I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I just didn't think I could go through with another 2 years of trying to get pregnant. No. It was terrible. Everybody offered me like counseling. And I knew that I'm a very practical person. Yeah. Counseling wouldn't do it. I wanted to hold another baby in my arms. Yeah. So I went to my doctor and I said, what can I do to try and speed up the process of getting pregnant? And he gave me Clomid, which is a fertility drug. Yeah. He said, look, you may have like umpteen babies. And I said, I don't care how many I have. I just want to get pregnant. And within 4 months, I was pregnant.
Oh, wow, 4 months.
Absolutely incredible.
Did you have really mixed, because you were still grieving? And then,
well, they told me at Great Ormond Street, don't try for another baby, like get over the grief of this baby. But the only thing that would help me to get over it was to have a baby. Like, how can you, there's no way. You can't, the amount of like counseling would never help me. Mm. So anyway, it was all good. Pregnancy was good. I was so happy. And when I got sort of into like contractions, I rang my doctor and I said, I think I should go to hospital. And he said, no, you're in very early stage labor. It'll be fine. And at the end of the phone, and I said, where will you be? And he said, I'll be at home. Called him again. I couldn't get hold of him. And eventually got him, and he was in a restaurant. And he said, oh no, it's still going to be a long time yet. I put the phone down, my waters broke. I went upstairs and the head came out. Now this is bad enough for any mother.
He'd gone for dinner after you said you thought you might be in labour.
He never called back. And I gave birth on the staircase. I remember going into all fours. It was just an instinctive thing to do. I called to my husband and I said, I think the baby's coming. He didn't believe me, but he came up. And later he told me like the baby was blue and he thought the baby was dead.
Oh my God.
But we didn't know that the baby, well, how do we know? Like the baby can't breathe until the body comes out.
Didn't know that either.
No. So anyway, so the body came out, and then I was attached by the cord to the baby. And for 2.5 hours, I lay there sort of half on the staircase, half in a room. Couldn't get the baby really close to me because I was afraid about the cord, and just thank God that this baby seemed to be okay.
Yeah.
And then somebody else came who was delivering another child and cut the cord. And then I went to hospital, and eventually my doctor arrived. I was covered in blood. I was wearing a Laura Ashley dress. I still had my shoes on when I was giving birth. And my mother arrived, and she arrives and she says, "Oh, I've come to see my daughter." And the nurse says, "Well, no one's given birth here, just one lady who actually gave birth at home." My mother said, "No, my daughter gave birth in the hospital." She comes, and I'm covered in blood.
Oh my God.
And like, the doctor's immaculate. My husband's not looking great. And like, what on earth has been going on? Anyway, Nicholas was fine. And he was the catalyst to my next life and my career. He was the world's worst eater. Let's be honest about it. And I didn't know what to do.
But you had to go through, after going through the trauma of losing a child, you then had to go through what I think is most mothers to be worst nightmare of
Also,
actually going into labour.
I'm not the earth mother type. I wanted the full epidural, not
Yes,
me out.
yeah. I was going to say, you need
Definitely wasn't what I had, kind of like bargained for. But there you are. It was actually quite a good birth in respects of the actual birth. Obviously terribly stressful. But, I think going down on all fours and having no intervention actually was quite good.
Really?
But I thought I was going to lose my child. And all this was going through in my mind. How will I ever cope if I lose a second child? And I really thought I would.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame you.
It was a nightmare.
God, okay. Expectant mothers. Trigger warning.
I gave my husband a midwifery certificate a few months later.
Oh my
We
goodness.
managed between us, goodness knows how, but we did. And Nicholas was born, and he was so wanted, and he changed my life. And having a child was what, gave me my life back.
Yeah. And for women that have lost children, you often hear people who don't really understand what it feels like giving advice to them, which I don't think is right. If you haven't walked in those shoes, then you have to be careful what advice you give. How do you feel like timing wise? It was good timing. You didn't feel like you should have waited a year, 2 years and had grieving time.
I suppose everybody's different, but for me, the only way to get through it was to have a child. I also wondered why this happened to her, because she was a healthy baby and then she died. And later on, we discovered that she'd been kissed by somebody with a cold sore. And now I campaign for the Lullaby Trust because I think, they told me at Great Ormond Street when I left, and they knew I would want to have another baby, that when I had another baby, not to let people hold her, not to let people kiss her, that they're very vulnerable when they're very young. And it's an important message to other mums out there. And sometimes you feel embarrassed about telling people not to kiss your baby, not to hold your baby. But there's a reason for it. Until they're a bit older, they're not very strong. They're vulnerable to infection. Yes, it was 1 in a million chance that she might might get herpes virus from a cold sore, but it can happen. And why take that risk? So with my next baby, I didn't have lots of people come and kiss her and hold her. I took her to the park. I kept her at home. And it's a message that I do put out there, and not to feel embarrassed about it, because there's a real reason why you want to keep those babies safe.
I agree with that. I mean, as a non-mother myself, I've gone to see new babies and they've said, "Could you just not kiss my baby?"
Yes.
And
you think that
I think that's weird.
Well, it's not weird.
Now I completely
you're not being
understand.
fussy. You're being safe.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. I mean, if I have a baby, I'll never ever let them.
Not if, definitely.
Okay, when I have a baby,
yes.
I will never ever let anyone kiss my baby. That's for sure.
When they're older, it's okay, but when they're very young, probably not.
They're vulnerable, and it's such a senseless.
There's also, you think this is something that happens to other people, but it happened to me. So for me, obviously, I live by that rule now.
And I completely agree. But having Nicholas sort of sparked this whole career that you'd never really anticipated, because he wasn't eating properly. And you came up with all these great recipes yourself. So tell me a bit about how you came up with these recipes and then how you started sharing them with your friends.
So as a mum, you can feel quite isolated. And I was certainly isolated after I lost my baby. Nobody wanted to come near me who had a baby. They just felt that it would upset me. So I was kind of on my own. So I felt that when I had Nicholas, I wanted to start a baby group where people could bring their babies and mix with other people. This is after they're about 6 months old. And I started this group called Babes in the Wood because I lived in St. John's Wood. Yeah. And I asked all the mums that I knew, and we had 70 mums, a few dads, but mostly mums, on the first day. And it just grew and grew and got bigger and bigger. And I was giving the recipes that I made for Nicholas out to all the mums because they were all having problems feeding their children. And I'd gotten to eat all sorts of things. Like, he didn't like chicken, but I made these amazing chicken apple balls with minced chicken thigh, breadcrumbs, onion, thyme, a little bit of grated apple to give it that sweetness that babies like, because breast milk is sweet. So they're conditioned to kind of like sweet food. So I was giving all these recipes out, and it was the mums that said to me, you know what, these recipes are amazing. And every week they'd ask me, like, what else have you got? They said, I should write a book about feeding children. And I thought about it, and I thought, I don't even know how to type. How on earth am I going to write a book? But then I thought, you know what? I want to make some meaning from her short life. And what a great thing to help other children to eat better and give them a longer life, because 1 in 3 of us will die from a diet-related disease. It's so important what you eat. So I started to write recipes, and then I decided to go up and down the country interviewing all the experts on child nutrition, pediatricians, allergy experts, whatever. That proved to be very confusing because all these so-called experts contradicted each other about, like, when do you give peanut butter? Somebody would say 6 months, some would say 1 year. So in the end, I thought, how am I going to find out the actual truth? So Natasha died at Great Ormond Street Hospital, and I worked with the head of nutrition there on the book. And I also worked at the Institute of Child Health, which is the research arm of Great Ormond Street. So that everything in the book was based on scientific research and not old wives' tales. And I was kind of before my time, like, you must give peanut butter at 6 months because that will help your baby not to help possibly develop the allergy. You need to give red meat because that contains iron. The iron that baby inherits from their mother runs out at 6 months. I wrote the book, it took me 2.5 years, and every single publisher I sent it to turned me down. 15 publishers.
15.
No literary agent would take me on. So I thought, oh gosh, I've just wasted 2.5 years of my life because I was so passionate about it and I really loved doing it and creating all the recipes. And then I thought, well, I'm just going to see, like, what I can do. And I was speaking to somebody I played tennis with, and they knew a book packager. I went to see them. They showed it at Frankfurt Book Fair, and the book was picked up by Simon & Schuster, a huge publisher in America.
Yeah, I mean, huge.
Yeah, it was published in 1991, and we went back to a couple of publishers. Random House, one of them, they took the book. The book sold out within 3 months. It went on to sell 5 million copies.
5 million
It became the
copies.
second best-selling hardback nonfiction book of all time. And it's still the best-selling book on feeding children in the country and published in 25 different languages.
But that just shows you that if you really, really believe in something and you believe in what you've created, that you should persevere and keep going. Because imagine a lot of people would have given up after 5 or 6 no's.
It was really hard. And of course I got terrible royalties because it was a book packager and you don't get good royalties. But luckily I only signed a 1-year contract with them and then went on to write, and I've written 51 books.
51 books. How do you write that many variations?
I'm always
Is it just always new recipes
and new ideas? And this new one, which comes out in February, is all about finger food, because I find that children at a certain stage become very independent and they want the only food that gets anywhere near their mouth is the ones they pick up themselves and put in their mouth.
Yeah.
And finger food is really important in how to make it. You can just, like, put everything to a food processor, wish it together, make it into little, like, croquettes, and children will love it. And you can put so many good things in it. And people just ran out of ideas of what to do. And now with an air fryer, it's brilliant.
Oh, it's a game changer.
Easy way. It's a game changer.
Yeah.
So it's the first book that's got, all normal, like, traditional ways of cooking, but also air fryer instructions for everything. And the food's amazing. I think the thing about my books is everything tastes great.
Yeah, you actually really enjoy the food.
And it's because I was in the south of France when Nicholas was a terrible eater. And I went to see a pediatrician because he wasn't very well. He took out this booklet of like artichoke puree and all these, like, weird things for children. And I thought, you know what? These books on feeding children, it was like, put a piece of liver in a saucepan of milk and poach it. Well, no wonder he didn't eat it. So I thought, I can make delicious soups. I'm going to make them into purees. Everything I made in that book, you could make it into something that the whole family would eat because it tastes so great. And you're training children's eating habits from the very beginning. And I wanted to give them lots of different things, curries and garlic and herbs. And it was, it was an amazing book because no book on feeding babies had ever done well. That's why nobody wanted to publish my book. It was totally uncommercial. Couldn't have chosen a worse subject. But my book was more of a chef's way of getting children to eat good food because it tastes so good.
You do wonder how they rejected it. That's very short-sighted when it is such a common problem for parents not being able to feed their children.
Well, who was I? I wasn't well known. And, now they'll take somebody who has a big Instagram following, but Instagram doesn't exist. So I just I just felt I needed it. I felt the other mothers in the playgroup needed it. So I felt like this book, there was a need for it. I never thought it would be a successful career. I just thought I'd write one book.
So it really just came out of a place
Nowhere.
of passion.
Absolutely.
And you didn't think...
But that's it. That's it. If you ever want to do something, don't do something just because you think it makes money. Do something you love and you're passionate about, because that will work. And I'm just as passionate, if not more so, about my career and what I do and helping parents feeding their children than I've ever been. And I'm very lucky to have a platform now because people trust me. And I feel a big responsibility. But the biggest thing we've done in the last few years is the app. The app has over 1,000 recipes in it. It's absolutely fantastic. And it has recipes from the very beginning of weaning your child. It teaches you how to cut food so your baby doesn't choke. It gives you first foods, after first tastes, 6, 9, 9 to 12, all the way up to amazing family food and Halloween and everything you want. And it's great because you can be in the supermarket, take it out, your phone's always with you, put in chicken and broccoli, and all the rest is chicken and broccoli for 6 to 9 months old will come out. So you've got an amazing search on it. And it's been very popular. And I'm really into like digital and apps, and they're brilliant for recipes. And so that's a very big project for us. And we're just, we cook, well, I cook every week for a whole day, and I put new recipes on the app. We have so many now people using the app. It's fantastic.
I can imagine though. Is Nicholas still a picky eater?
No, he eats everything. He is honestly the most adventurous eater.
I mean, he's grown up and married now, isn't he? So hopefully
Yes,
not picky.
What? I can't believe how much food he packs in. It's unbelievable. So he's definitely come a corner on that. And my girls are quite fussy too. But that was the best training, being a mother with fussy children and finding out ways of getting them to eat, because it's partly how you behave with them. Actually, not to give attention to not eating, but give lots of attention to eating anything new or just trying something. So they realize that they're not going to have attention for bad habits. And that works really well. And also not too many snacks. Because when they're hungry, they'll eat something new. And children often aren't hungry because we give them all these, like what I call them Wotsits without salt. All these like proliferation of snacks on a supermarket aisle that have no goodness in them.
No, that was actually what I was going to ask you next, because I have a mixture of my friends, some who are what I'd call laid back, and chocolate, cake, fine, and then ones that want to avoid the sugar. What's your view on giving children, young children, chocolate, cake, and a lot of sort of refined sugar?
I think if you don't give children a choice of foods and you ban sugar or chocolate, they're only going to want it all the more as soon as they get out of your orbit, and it's going to be so attractive to them. Forbidden fruit makes it more attractive. So I've never been like that with my children. I always made such delicious food that was healthy, amazing salad dressings. I'll make a chocolate beetroot cake or a chocolate courgette cake. But if they wanted to go to McDonald's occasionally or they wanted to blow out a birthday party, that's absolutely fine with me. It's all right. And I'm not a purist, I don't think it has to be all organic. And I think when you make a cake, make it with butter and sugar and put chocolate in it. It's a treat. It's what your child eats every day that matters. And little treats are okay. I think the most important thing to realize is that sugary things, it's the frequency with which children eat sugar that will determine how bad their teeth are. So just make it like as part of a meal, after the meal. But not in between meals. And my children would rather have an amazing salad than anything to do with chocolate, because I make the most incredible salad dressings and, just brilliant, healthy food that they love. And they're pretty healthy eaters. And they had all this food around them, but they didn't want it.
But they had the choice. So I met someone and he said that he had gone through a phase at university where he got enormous. He'd put on a huge amount of weight. He'd put on probably 8 stone when he got to university.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes, but now is absolutely ripped and eats clean. And I said, what happened at university? He said, my mother would not let me touch sugar. It was banned in the house. So as soon as I moved out, it was it was heaven. And I just went for it. And I wasn't allowed any junk food. So I did the pizza, the kebabs, the cake, the chocolate, and I just piled it on. And that's a problem when I've seen a couple of mums, they come to a birthday party and they've made their own little energy balls. So their child's eating. Poor child. Yeah, and they're having to eat something different to all the other children. I think
it's funny because I work with one of the top allergy pediatric professors. And his name is Professor Adam Fox. He says something to me once. He said, if a child comes into his surgery and they're sucking a sweet, the sweet falls on the floor and the mother doesn't mind the child putting that sweet back, that child's going to be okay. It's the mother that hermetically seals and cleans her kitchen, where the child's immune system is not challenged. And the mother is so careful about what the child eats that child's going to have a terrible time. And it's real life.
Yeah.
Children put their fingers in their mouth. Yeah. They are not sterile.
Even worse than that.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I think it's like germs are okay. You want to get them and you want to get a strong immune system. Obviously, you don't want to go crazy. But at the same time, like, you've got to know that life is to enjoy life and food is to be enjoyed. And you can't make your children different. If you go to a birthday party and you don't let them eat what other children are eating, they will rebel against it. They won't like it. And you can't do that to a child. I would never do that to a child.
No, that seems very damaging.
Mind you, I do make great energy balls. They've got no sugar in them. So you can choose what you want. It's up to you what you want to do.
You're making me want to come down for dinner, honestly. So what's interesting is when we first spoke, so you'd had Nicholas and then you had Laura. How many months after
she
Nicholas?
was born 14 months.
Okay, so quite a small...
Well, that's as a reaction to losing a child.
Yeah, you wanted to...
I didn't have a great birth either. I had another doctor and he was eventually struck off. And
really?
I had a massive hemorrhage after everybody went home that evening after I'd given birth. He decided to induce me but not give me any pain relief. It was a nightmare birth. Oh. And then the nurse said he didn't give me a syntopatrin injection, which clamps down your blood vessels. I never thought about it till I saw on the front page of Evening Standard a picture of him. They'd been struck off because he had actually been struck off from National Health, was still working in private. Anyway, I was stuck with a blood transfusion for 2 days after I gave birth to Lara, which is obviously not great. And Lara was also a very fussy eater. And then Scarlett came along 2 years later. And also, actually, that was not the greatest of birth because I didn't have a doctor. You got into a hospital.
What keeps happening to you?
I gave birth and I was about to give birth and my husband just got me into the car and we live around the corner from the hospital. Got me into a room and I think we had a nurse and I just gave birth. And then my body went into shock and I just shook for about an hour before I could actually get still again.
Oh my goodness.
And then he said, no more children. It's not good.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I have like precipitate labor. I just go from like... There's no transition.
It's like 0 to 100. It's coming.
And I'm tiny. I just thought I'd have cesareans. I didn't know how this happened. But anyway,
oh my goodness.
That was it. So Scarlett was the last one. And she's just got engaged.
Oh, congratulations. Yes, nice. Okay, so you got 3 kids. And I remember what you said to me was really interesting because you had released this now hugely successful book. But, you know, and well, I don't know the timeline of when you released all the books.
It was 1991 when I released that first book.
Okay.
And it got published.
So you sort of had the startings of this very exciting career and then you had 3 really, really young children.
Well, that was great because I also had the playgroup where I could test all the recipes. So it was actually amazing. And I've always worked hard. You know, I was a musician. I think as a mom, you should never feel guilty about having a life of your own and a career of your own because I think I do admire full-time mothers, but I couldn't do it. I knew that. I knew that I wouldn't be fulfilled and I wanted to be a really good mom. So I chose to write because I knew I could be at home, be with the children, still be a good mom, and I could write when they're asleep and I could write when they're in bed, and I just did that. And eventually I knew that I wanted to do food and supermarkets and all of that. But I didn't do it for nearly 10, 11 years.
So you sort of
just wrote books.
Purposely super growth so that you could be at home and spend time. And obviously you really wanted to be with your kids. Yeah, and you wanted to be a mum more than anything. Yeah. Particularly after losing a child. I still think it's one of the
most important roles in a woman's life is to be a mother to her children.
Yeah.
And it was very important to me. And I just felt that later on I could do more when they were at school. And that's what I did. But I wasn't that proactive about it. It's just that Marks and Spencer's rang me up completely out of the blue and asked me if I would help them design a range of children's food.
How did you feel when you got that phone call?
Well, it was great. I mean, my first job was to go around the supermarket, just buy whatever I could find in Marks and Spencer's and just see if like this type of food that children might like and then design a range. And it was like going to university and be paid for it. And I worked with them for nearly 2 years, designed their range. And then I worked with Boots on a co-branded range of baby food and equipment to make baby food and my books. And that was quite successful. And Boots wanted me to be exclusive to them, but I wanted to go in supermarkets. So I found a consultant, I found a factory, and I went to see Sainsbury's. I was very green. I didn't know what I was doing, to be honest. They must have thought I was a complete idiot. But I had a factory, and I had like designed some packaging, and they actually said, yeah. They said, yeah, we'll launch it. And I launched that in 2006. So 1991 to 2006 was the first time I did my own range.
Wow. And how did that go? Was it like a slow start?
It's tough working in supermarkets. It's not easy. You're not really in control of your own business, and it's hard all the way through. Everybody thinks it's an easy business. Nothing is easy.
No, I think when you're entrepreneurial and you work hard, and you succeed, it can look to others on the outside like it just happened for you and that you didn't put any work in. But this is years and years of hustle and grind to get to where you are.
You have to not be afraid of failure. You have to be able to go out of your comfort zone. You have to realize that you will fail.
Yes.
And that's not to beat yourself up about that, because it's only by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and doing something that you think actually might fail is that you will find that one thing that might work. And I think being an entrepreneur, it's not a part-time job. It's not a full-time job. It's a lifestyle. It's like you live it, you breathe it. There isn't a moment when you're not thinking about your business. That's me, and I'm still like that. I work very late at night, and I'm really passionate about it, and I have an amazing team behind me. And I want to break new ground all the time. And it's kind of something that I will leave behind. I think what you do for yourself dies with you, but what you do for others will live on. And I think the why I did what I do, for me, it's something that I want to leave behind. My daughter now works with me, my other daughter, my older daughter in my company. And Natasha's life will make a difference to a lot of people. And that's what I set out to do. I was given an MBE by the Queen, which for me was
unbelievable.
It was like it came out of the blue. I don't know how I got it. I still don't know how I got it. And that was in 2006. And I just thought, yes, that's really what I wanted to do, because I never thought that my career would ever make money. Never thought.
Really?
That. Never. Not in a million years that a book on feeding babies would ever make money. Never. And
now it's
everyone was saying to me, get a real
Bible
job.
now.
Like, don't do this, get a real job. But I didn't. I did what I felt was my passion.
Do you think going through what you went through, such immense trauma, made you much more fearless and, not care as much about others' opinions and how they judge you? You made a decision. Do you think that made you that bit braver to just go for it?
I do. Is that why? Is that why you do something that gives you that strength, 100%. And also to trust in your own intuition.
Yeah.
And maybe if I trust my own intuition more when I lost Natasha, maybe she would have lived longer. And I think about that. I mean, I don't dwell on it, but I think about mothers know their child better than anyone else, and they need to speak up if they feel something's wrong. And I should have spoken up more, perhaps, done more tests on her. And I feel also that your intuition about business, however many focus groups you go to, I live and breathe this, and I try recipes on. I know enough about my business to know what will work and what won't work by now.
Yeah.
And it's just to get people to believe in you. But if you don't believe in yourself, no one's going to believe in you. And I think that a lot of women lack the confidence that men have. Very often, when a woman goes for a promotion, she'll want to be 95% sure that she's qualified for it.
Yeah.
And I think, and no disrespect, that men will probably be 50% sure and they'll still go for it.
If that.
So the woman will doubt herself more.
Yeah.
Especially women who've come out of the workplace, have had children, will think like, am I still qualified? And actually you're very qualified because, well, you can deal with anyone. You're dealing with an irrational toddler, which is the worst possible person you can deal with. You are multitasking, which is a very important part of business.
Yeah.
And you don't waste time because you want to go back to your children. I employ a lot of women who've worked with me as single women, have had children and stayed with me and had gone on for their annual maternity leave and stayed with me and been amazing. And I think employing women who've got children is fantastic.
I do agree with that because I've worked with a lot of mothers, and I've found that even if their hours are condensed down by, say, 2 hours less than ever, so they work 6 hours instead of 8 hours, I have to say the output is usually far greater from the condensed hours.
I was quite shocked actually because I was listening to a podcast just now on my way here, and it was somebody talking about Kemi Badenoch and saying, but she does a lot with her children, so I'm not sure that she's Prime Minister material.
I read that article and I was horrified. She's too hands. She wants to be
too hands-on with her children.
Which actually,
in today's world, how can you say that? That is a terrible thing to say. Of course you're going to be a mother and you're going to be hands-on with your children, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be good at your job. It doesn't mean that at all.
Well, none of the other prime ministers have been good at their job and they're not hands-on.
And just because they're men and they're fathers, are they not hands-on? I mean, what? I don't know. Anyway.
We've got a changing world now, right, where you have changing roles. You know, historically it was much more mum, dad goes to work, dad comes home, but mum would do the cooking and that side of things. But now you've got stay-at-home dads and they want to try recipes and they want to cook well.
But there's so many women who have had children who have created the most incredible businesses.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
It's anyway, that was an interesting comment that I definitely didn't agree with.
I definitely don't agree with that comment either. So in terms of the empire, we've got 51 books, number 52 to come.
Yes.
In Feb?
So yes, in February. This is a Think of Food book.
Okay,
published by DK.
App.
My app. We do a lot of things that people don't know about. So I do all the food on P&O cruise liners, which has nothing to do with P&O ferries. The P&O cruise liners, they have like 6,400 passengers on board.
Whoa.
And I go there and I develop all the recipes and they make them this incredible kitchen. And they make their own chicken nuggets. They don't.
Do they?
Honestly, fantastic. So I do all of their cruise liners. And in fact, in one of them, they have an entire demonstration kitchen. And I had to get off within 15 minutes, or I would have gone to Italy or Finland or somewhere.
It's not the worst place.
And then I'm off on Sunday to a resort called Sani, which has 29 restaurants. It's in Thessaloniki in Greece, where I dress up as a witch and I cook with 150 children making fun Halloween food. I do it every year. I work with a lot of hotels. I'm going to Abu Dhabi to do Taste of Abu Dhabi, then Taste of Dubai. And I got a phone call from Australia about 10 years ago. And I went over there and developed a food range. And now we have a huge business in Australia supplying Coles and Woolworths every single Coles and Woolworths store in Australia has our range of food. So it's very exciting. And I'm going to Australia in March. And I'm like a household name there. I mean, loads of people go to America and it's quite difficult because it's quite disjointed.
Yeah.
But Australia is quite good because once you get into those two supermarkets, you literally have the whole country. And it's been amazing. I mean, having that career in another country.
And I think obviously it's apparent that one of the biggest reasons your business your empire has been so successful is that you are continuously innovating. You don't rest and stop and say, right, this is our offering. You are constantly adding, researching. Do you think that's kind of the key to keeping a business alive through the years? Because you've got a lot of short-term businesses who do well, sell, great, but it's hard to have a business that stays relevant over all the decades.
I think there's a few things that were important when I started my business. One is that I chose a niche. I think if I'd written a book on adult food, I would not have a career. I'm honest about that. It wasn't nobody had done what I did, which was basically focus on children because it wasn't sexy to do that. You know, they want to be like making Michelin star and getting all of this. I was a mum. And also realizing like they're time poor mums and dads, like it's got to be quick and easy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to stay in my niche and then develop and make sure that everything you do is healthy because that's what I'm known for. So if you see the Annabel Karmel brand, you know it's going to be good for you.
Yes.
And never go out of that. And I love what I do. And also like some of these faceless brands, people don't try the recipes all the time. I go and I'll buy it from Tesco or Sainsbury's or Iceland, Asda or wherever, and I will try it every week. And if it's not quite right, I will tell the factory it's not quite right. And I'm very finicky about like, I want to make it taste like you would make it yourself at home. And that's because it's my brand, it's got my name on it, and I care.
Yeah, because I was thinking this when I was in the supermarket. I'm trying to eat healthily at the moment, and I was thinking, are there any healthy frozen foods?
Well, frozen's good; it locks in all the goodness. So
no, I'm not. I'm not going to lie to you. I bought an Annabel Karmel. I went into another section. I was like, well, I know it's healthy, so I ate a baby meal.
Well, my chicken tikka masala is delicious.
Honestly,
it's very, very good.
But at least you know you're getting something that's healthy, right?
Yeah.
But I was looking at all these different food brands, and a lot of them are owned by like the big giants within the food industry. And you
they call them different names, but they're still owned by Tesco,
and you're like,
or whatever.
There's no personality behind it, so I don't trust it necessarily.
Well, it's interesting. There are very few areas in the supermarket which are brand led, and the two are children and pets, because you're emotionally attached to your children and your pet, and you don't want to have a Tesco own brand. And so I think that's helped me stay in supermarkets. And I think that I don't want it to be bland. So much of the children's food was bland, because you have to have low salt. You've got to find other ways of making it delicious. When I brought out a chicken tikka masala, I wasn't sure if it would do well, because, like people probably wouldn't think of giving a curry, but it's my number one selling meal.
Is it?
Yeah, for 1-year-olds. And also you can add that garam masala and like curry and mango chutney, and you can make it tasty without having to add salt. And it's really, really popular and it's delicious.
And why is too much salt bad for babies?
It's bad for their kidneys, and also you're training them to have too much salt, which then leads to like all sorts of things like strokes. So you just want to train your child not to want to have too much salt. So it's important.
Yeah. And I've noticed how you're also super hands-on still in your business, like going and dressing up as a witch somewhere.
If you don't know everything that's going on in your business, that's a real danger signal. You've got to know everything. And you learn every day. You're learning something. You've got to understand everything. Employment law, everything. And I wasn't qualified in business. I played the harp and I sang, and it was a very different career. But I learned on the job, and that's a good way of learning, actually.
I think that's an interesting angle.
The other thing I do now is this. This is a book that I really love. It's a book on getting children to cook for themselves.
Oh, wow.
So when my children were little and they were like 4, I got them in the kitchen and they would make their own supper.
Really?
And I would help them maybe like chop things up and help them put things in the oven. But that's the way I got them to cook.
It's the way forward.
Got the love of cooking. And also they were fussy, and if they made something themselves, they're more likely to eat it.
Yeah.
And they love being part of the adult world.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
So I do a lot of books now on teaching children how to cook, and we've just launched with Craft and Crumb, which is it's a company that's been going for 9 years. Also 2 ladies, and they started off making these like kind of kits for children.
Oh, that's brilliant! Like a Hello Fresh sort of thing, but for kids.
Well, it's more like fun things to make, like chocolate muffin mice and things like that. But it gets them in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And we're doing a joint branded range now, which is really nice.
Wow.
But in here, it's proper food like you would make for dinner, and all the recipes are delicious. I think even more important that if a child makes something, I want them at the end of it to want to eat it. So I make sure that the recipes are really good in there. That's an amazing book.
I love that, and I think, going back to the point of being really super present within your business, you watch well, maybe you don't. I watch, and lots of people watch TV programs like Undercover Boss, and they go into, if they have stores or factories, they go in and they're like, wow, I had no idea that was happening, and this is why our figures are bad this year. So you do really subscribe to the fact that it doesn't matter whether you're wearing a hairnet in a factory or if you're going to a glitzy launch.
Many hairnets and terrible.
I can imagine you've had many hairnets on. But being there and seeing every facet of the business is, obviously you can't be there all the time and in a million places, but at least understanding every facet. Because a lot of people give the advice in business that's like, if you're not good at it, find someone who is, which is, yes, that's smart hiring. But that's fine if you're not good at it, but you at least...
Yeah.
Don't you agree? You at least have to know what's going on in your own house.
100%. I mean, I still cook every week for a whole day, and I'm always making new recipes. But I also think if you're like thinking to start a cafe, maybe in Battersea, and you think you can do it from your computer, you can't.
No.
Because you need to sit in a cafe in Battersea and see how many people come in, how long they stay, what they're drinking, what they're eating. That's the only way you're going to know, kind of, are my overheads going to cover the kind of money that I'm going to be able to earn?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to lose a lot of money. And I mean, I started a business where it wasn't capital intensive, which was quite lucky for me. But if it's capital intensive business, do your research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very important.
What advice would you give? Because like must be so many, and not just female, but most of the listeners and watchers are female, but to aspiring business founders who are umming and ahhing and they're a little bit scared, what would you say to them as advice to give them that kick forward?
I think that what I was saying before is that you must be very passionate at what you do and really love it, because it will be difficult and there will be times when you want to give up, So that's number one. Choose something you're passionate about. And then choose something where you think you can do something that's a little bit different, but you don't have to be an inventor. A lot of people think, I've got to come up with an incredible new invention. I didn't. I just wrote a book that was kind of better than anybody else's book, and the food was more tasty. And that's what got me through really getting that book to be really popular. And then believe in yourself and don't think you can do it all by yourself. I did it all by myself for a long time. And then I hired a PR person, and you need other people. You can't do it on your own. And I think it's about like just understanding every aspect of your business.
Yeah, really, like research.
Yeah, really doing that research to make sure that you're not going to lose a lot of money at the beginning.
Yeah.
Slowly. Sometimes it might be worth staying in a job and doing it part-time and then leaving your job. Because sometimes in a startup, you don't earn money for a long time. And so it's hard, especially if you're a parent.
Don't have money.
You need two incomes. So
yeah,
it is hard. But I see so many mums who are so amazingly like strong with, how they've coped. It's amazing. And I like to support them. So we have an Instagram which has about 550,000 followers. And I often do giveaways of people's, amazing products that are startup companies to get them on the map. And I think women should help other women. It is hard being a woman. I think it's harder to raise money.
Absolutely.
Hard for people to take you seriously. I think you're taken advantage of. I think it still does happen.
Yeah.
It's not so easy.
No, I always say there's a special place in hell for women who don't help.
I know. I say that too.
I mean,
don't help other women.
I can't bear it. And also, why not? If it's not going to affect your business and it takes you 5 minutes to make an introduction, that could change that person's life.
100%. So I love working with like Craft and Crumb, which is two women. You start up a business and like I can help them, and we can work together, and it's a really lovely thing to do. And I like to work with people that I like and enjoy. And I mean, work is such a big part of your life. You spend probably more of your waking hours at work than anything else, especially when your children are more grown up. You've got to love it. And if you don't love what you're doing, I think you've got to change it.
Yeah, definitely. And you can really tell that like your heart and soul is into this.
And it's never too late to change your business. Never too late.
No, absolutely.
And I think for women, what you do before you have children may not work after you've had children. Me playing the harp and going and traveling all over the world, that definitely wouldn't have worked.
No.
And I wanted to stay at home. I wanted to be a good mum. It was important to me. So I chose something that I could be building the foundations of my career, knowing that eventually I could do other things, but starting off slowly. And it's okay to do that as a mum.
I agree. I read something online last night, actually, and it said, just remember, if you're in your 30s and you feel like you haven't achieved enough, that at 40, which Kardashian was it? Khloe or I can't remember all the names of them. One of the Kardashians found her true love at 40.
Yeah.
If you look at Vera Wang, she didn't really...
There's lots of people.
Probably 50 she was when she really flew to success. So there should never be an age limit in any way. You should never feel like you failed. I haven't done it by now. I shouldn't start it then. It's never too late. Do you have any, because you've achieved a lot, is there anything in the pipeline that you're happy to share that you would really like to get to? Like, is there that one thing where you would jump for the opportunity to do?
Actually, it's about my app, really. I would like to get my app to be popular in the States.
Yeah.
So I really think that the app is such a great tool for parents.
Absolutely.
It just holds their hand through every stage of feeding their children. And the recipe is absolutely fantastic. And it's always with you. And I think we all get very stuck in a rut and make the same thing over and over again. And however much children like it, eventually they don't want to eat it anymore.
No, true.
And people like, mama's like, well, like, you like that, but like, you've just given it to them too often, basically. You need to give them lots of variation. So I am working now with somebody that I met in New York, because my son actually now lives in New York. And he developed a frozen food range in New York, and I happened to meet him. And he was telling me about how difficult it was with the food range. I don't really want to go into a food range in America, but I really think the app could be incredibly popular out there. So I'm interested in doing that. I'm also interested in developing a tableware range for toddlers.
Wow.
Yeah. So we've kind of designed it and we're just looking at doing it now. So I think the app and the tableware range, I like that because I'm in control of that business. It's my business.
Yeah.
I don't have to rely on a retailer, to sell my food. And I just feel like it's an extension of my books now. And I embrace now, like the new world. It is about digital. It is about when you have a great Instagram following. I mean, you've got loyal followers and you can message people on Instagram now.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through their agents anymore. And it's a good thing, I think. Instagram is good for me. It works very well. I've got ambassadors that have, smaller followings that, support what we do. And I love to support other women. So yeah, I find Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all of those very helpful to a business. I didn't have it when I started. I just had a website.
But you've been so adaptable.
Like, well, it was my daughter. My youngest daughter got me onto Instagram. I remember when I had 78 followers, and I thought, this is great, And my hope is they didn't know what I was doing. I was just doing it by myself for about 2 years. And eventually they cottoned on to Annabel's doing Instagram. It's quite a good idea. So I was pretty early on Instagram. And I still do a lot of the posting myself.
Do you? I did wonder if there's like a team behind it.
There is a team behind me, but I develop all the recipes myself. It's me, on camera making them. And also I just suddenly want to talk about something, so I will, or I'm making lunch and this is what I'm eating, and I'll just have my phone with me and I'll do a story, and I love it, and it connects you to people, and life is about people.
Yeah,
it's about helping people, connecting with people. We don't live in a vacuum.
No, absolutely.
So yeah, I embrace that, and I'd like to do more in the digital space.
Wow. Well, you are truly an aspirational entrepreneur, and for a lot of women as well. And thank you so much for sharing. And
I'll tell you one thing, actually, which I think is important to know, is that I was an entrepreneur. I mean, I am an entrepreneur, but I was an entrepreneur pretty early on. And people say, well, how can you be a good mother? But I think you are a good mother, and especially now, because I help both of my children, both my daughters. One works with me. I'm literally her mentor, and she will probably take over the business from me. And the other one, I can help her. And I think I've got that skill that I can pass on to my children. And that's a very valuable thing. And I haven't lost my child. She comes into my office every day. So there are benefits sometimes of having a business.
You said she's more your boss sometimes.
Oh, yes, this is true. I sometimes think I'm working for her. She would never admit to that, but it's true.
Well, I think it's absolutely phenomenal. And, I also think you've built this unbelievable, special legacy for Natasha.
I'm very proud of that. And it's what I wanted to do, and it's gone beyond where I thought it would ever go to.
Absolutely.
Which is a dream, really.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being so honest and sharing. This has been wonderful. I'm going to call you back when I have a baby. I'm going to be like, I don't know what to do.
Have a baby.
I don't know what to do. Can I come over? But thank you so much. I'm so excited to see what comes next for you, because I know there's just always going to be something phenomenal around the corner. So thank you so much.
Who knows? That's the good thing about life. You never know what's going to happen.
Mystery. Thanks, Annabel.